Tavis Smiley has been watching the protests intensify all across this country over police shootings of African-American men. He is the host, of course, of Tavis Smiley on PBS and the author of Death of a King, the real story of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s final year. I watch you all the time, Tavis. I've been wanting to get your perspective on this. President Obama gave an interview to BET today. Here's what he had to say about the protests.
Then attention spans move on, right? There's the next thing. There's some international crisis. There's something that happens here. And change doesn't really occur. And the value of peaceful protests, activism, organizing, it reminds the society this is not yet done.
What's your reaction, Tavis? The protests we're seeing across the country to Eric Garner, the Darren Wilson decision, what the president just said.
First of all, I appreciate and agree with much of what the president had to say. There were two or three things that sort of galled me today, quite frankly. Number one, when the president goes on to suggest in that conversation that change takes time, that we have to be patient. Dr. King once said that change does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability. You have to be deliberate about these things. And so for the president to suggest to black folk this is going to take time, we have to be patient, that things don't happen overnight, I get the point he was trying to make. And yet the truth is, if he had been patient in 2008, he wouldn't be the president tonight. So that message of being patient as opposed to doing exactly what folk are doing right now, I think rings hollow, number one. Number two, the president goes on BET to, once again, to some extent, lecture black folk, but goes on Colbert to sort, to do the jokey joke thing. And I quite frankly don't fancy that. In the Oval Office, the president has a bust of Dr. King. I'm glad it's there. But at the same time, Dr. King once wrote a book called Why We Can't Wait. And I would recommend to the president and all the rest of us that we read that book of what King was saying to us 50 years ago about why we can't wait. And there's in time, as you know, there are two dimensions to time. There's chronos, the passage of time, and then there is kairos, an appropriate, right, critical moment in time. This is a kairos moment for this president and for all of us, quite frankly, and we can't miss this, Don. We got to step into this.
Tavis, I want to ask you this because, the children of Eric Garner were on tonight, and they were smiling and having. Are you saying the president can't be multidimensional because you mentioned Stephen Colbert and then you mentioned going on BET? He can't be multidimensional at dealing with the situation?
No, what I'm saying is I'd like to know when this BET interview was scheduled. Most folk were unaware of it. It sort of came out of nowhere. It wasn't mentioned in the listings. I don't know what the motivation was for doing that. What I'm suggesting is that the president, can't have one message for us to be calm, to be patient, that things happen over time. And then,
what would you have him do, Tavis? Because you tweeted, you said blatant disrespect for black life on Obama's watch. What will it take for him to step into this moment? Hashtag Eric Garner. What would you have the president do?
When the president was running for president, when Senator Obama was running for president, and race became a critical issue in whether or not he was actually going to get the nomination, much less get to the White House, he took the time to give the most important major public policy address of his entire campaign at the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia. And now what you're telling me is the best we can do is an interview here or there? I just don't buy it, Don.
He's also doing things. He's starting a commission. He's been meeting with leaders from all over the country. Okay, I take you at what you just said, but I think it's the president's between a rock and a hard place when it comes to this particular issue.
Let me be clear. This happened, that is to say racism being the most intractable issue in this country was the case before he ever became president. I understand that there's value in the symbolism of his being president. I'm just saying, as I've said so many times, that great presidents aren't born, they're made. They have to be pushed into their greatness, and it may very well be, back to that kairos moment, that this is the reason, in part, why at this critical juncture, this man happens to be the president of the United States. I'm just saying, step into your moment and provide the kind of moral leadership, not a one-off here or there on BET or Colbert, but step into your moment and provide the kind of conversation, the kind of leadership, the kind of focus on a social justice agenda that would make sure, as Dr. King said 50 years ago, that we aren't still dealing with what he called the triple threat of racism, poverty, and militarism.
It sounds, to people listening, all right, you and I know each other, let's be honest. It sounds that you're being extremely hard on the president because this
come
is
on,
not...
Don, don't start that nonsense.
No, it's not.
Don.
Listen, no. This is not, it's not an easy, it's not nonsense. I'm just being honest with you. As I sit here, we spent, maybe 3 or 4 minutes and that you haven't said hardly anything positive about what the president is doing. Maybe he didn't do it properly in the past. Maybe he is stepping into his moment. I hear you saying that, but it sounds like a whole lot of complaining about the president of the United States.
Don,
you don't sit in that
that's
seat. You don't know the pressures that he's dealing with.
Go
ahead. You can say whatever you want to me. That's why I asked you the question. Answer honestly. Go ahead.
And I will say it. I'll always be honest with you, my friend.
Yeah.
As always, that's an easy way for you to score some points. That was a layup. Hooray for Don. You got a couple points for playing to a particular audience.
That's insulting. That's not what I'm doing here. I'm just being honest about what I'm hearing. Don't do that. Don't do that to me, Tavis. That's not what I'm doing.
I think what you just did was insulting to me. At the end of the day, you asked me on your show, number one. You asked me a question, number two. I gave you my honest answer, number three, and then you want to critique my answer as being too harsh. You're entitled to that, but don't invite me on, ask me a question, ask for an honest answer, and then try to jump bad with me, brother.
You can't tell me what questions to ask. I'm telling you what it sounds like. To anyone who's listening, you're doing a whole lot of complaining about the president, who's in a very tough position. That's all I'm saying to you.
Where is it written that Don Lemon speaks for all of America? You just said to anyone listening, that's your perspective, my friend. You don't speak for all of America. You're wrong for that.
I didn't say I speak for all of America, but it says that all of America can listen because...
You said to anyone listening. You don't speak for the whole country, Don.
And neither do you.
I didn't say I did.
Okay. Yeah. But anyway, let's move on.
Yeah.
All right. Finally, on a separate topic, let's talk about this. Mark Whitaker under fire for not including the alleged Cosby rape story in his authorized biography. Does that disappoint you, and do you have anything that you want to say about this story? Because I know that you know Bill Cosby.
I know Bill Cosby. I know Camille Cosby. I am praying for Camille and for the entire family, and that's all I have to say about it. God bless and help Camille and the family to deal with this. And this is a tough situation, and I wouldn't want to be in it. I feel sorry for those persons who have allegedly been victimized by Mr. Cosby, but this is a fight he's going to have to fight. And quite frankly, with all due respect to the victims of these crimes, who ought to use every legal means available to them to get the kind of justice that they deserve. At the same time, this issue that we're talking about tonight, where black men are under fire, it's open season on them, and you see not just black folk, but in good white folk, good Americans of conscience in the streets protesting all across the country. I don't want one issue to trump the other. We can talk about both, but this is a clearly important issue for this democracy.
Thank you, Tavis Smiley. Go in peace. Thank you very much.
Appreciate you, my friend.
Was it a tragic accident? An unarmed